On winter nights the wind climbed the black ramparts of the castle and rattled the iron rings on the great oak doors as if a host of unseen petitioners had come to beg him to live again. In those hours the lamps burned low and the old tapestries, saints, falcons, golden vines, moved like breath on a sleeping chest. But the man whose seal still commanded vineyards and villages kept to the shadows, walking the echoing galleries with a cane and a quiet that unnerved even the bravest servants. Alejandro Tomás de la Serna y Altamira, once the most celebrated rider in Castile, kept his left leg wrapped and his past sealed tighter still. They said he was broken. They said it the way people speak of storms after they pass, with awe and a touch of cruelty. Lucia Morales heard it first from the driver who brought her up, a talkative man from Villafranca who smelt of orange peel and horses. "The Duque," he said, spitting over the side as the road tilted toward the crimson cliffs. "Ah, Senora, the fall crushed more than his bone. His fiancée left. The creditors came. Since then? He eats alone, prays alone, speaks to no one." Lucia tucked her hands deeper into her cloak and watched the castle come into view, stone fused with cliff like an old scar with the body that made it. "And the child?" she asked. "His niece," the driver said. "Parents dead last spring in a fever. Little Inés. You're to be her instructora, no?" "Governess," Lucia said. She had turned down 2 respectable offers in Madrid to come here, to a world that still kept rotas for table service and bowed to titles. She had not told her father she had chosen a duke's house. He was a printer in Salamanca who loved republics and typefaces more than saints. "You are sure there is music in this place?" she asked lightly. "I was told there was a pianoforte." The man laughed. "Music? My lady, they say the Duque listens to nothing but the sea in his head." Yet when Lucia stood in the ducal chapel the first Sunday after her arrival, she heard something unexpected, not the sea, but a boy's clear treble voice drifting from the organ loft, and beneath it a baritone, warm and steady, correcting a line softly. She looked up. On the bench, hands folded with an awkward reverence, sat Inés in her blue dress, swinging her feet. Behind her, half in shadow, stood a man in a black coat, hair tied carelessly back, the famous cane leaning against the rail. He was taller than she'd imagined, thinner, with the kind of face that seems carved to withstand weather. Not beautiful. Rather, and she only knew the word because her father loved such words, present. He looked down, and for a long, startled moment their eyes met across the nave. Lucia felt the look like the first sip of wine after months of water, warm, alarming. He inclined his head the smallest degree. She lowered hers quickly and studied the stone floor like a devoted penitent. After the service, Inés slipped her hand into Lucia's. "He liked that you made the Gloria fast," the girl whispered. "Everyone here makes it slow as a funeral." "Who liked?" Lucia asked, feigning ignorance. "My tío," Inés said, eyes bright. "But don't tell him I told you. He pretends not to like anything." Pretends. The word lodged like a splinter. In the weeks that followed, the castle rearranged itself around Lucia's steps. She learned the hours when the kitchens steamed with almond milk and cinnamon, when the grooms led the nervous Arabians to the lower stables where the wind couldn't find them, when the housekeeper, Dona Pilar, prayed for too long and let the bread burn. She learned Inés's every mood. She learned slowly the Duque's silence, how he entered a room without warning the way true sorrow does, how he lifted his cane like a man saluting an old rival, how he would pause by the window at twilight and watch the line where the plains met the sky as if he had forgotten something there and meant to fetch it before night fell. She did not learn why the riding accident that had taken his strength had taken more than that, why he let creditors circle like kites, why he refused every invitation to Madrid, why he kept a sealed letter on his desk with its wax unbroken. She did not ask. She did not have to. Servants talk, and the castle had 1,000 mouths. "His betrothal to the Austrian," whispered Clara, a scullery maid who loved tragedy like a season. She sent the ring back when he could no longer dance. A note: "I was promised a partner for the quadrille, not a cane for the grave." Lucia refused to believe anyone cruel enough to write that could exist. Yet the image, ring, cane, grave, would not leave her. On a blue day when the almond trees along the lower terraces startled the world with early blossom, Inés begged to walk there. The Duque, appearing with his indecipherable timing, offered to accompany them. "If you will let me go slow," he said, mouth tilted in a smile that did not yet know how to be a smile. "I am no longer a horse." Nor a ghost, Lucia found herself saying before she could stop her mouth. Heat rushed to her cheeks. He looked at her sharply. "No. Not yet." They went. The path curved along the cliff. The blossoms trembled as if they were not flowers but held breath. Halfway down the second terrace, a storm gust found them and the Duque steadied himself against a cypress. Inés ran ahead, dancing through petals, shouting, "We are a procession. The saints are dropping confetti."
"Careful," he called. Lucia turned.
The wind had blown his hair back. He stood taller than she had yet seen him, the cane held not for need but balance. His eyes were on Ines, but for one unguarded second they slid to Lucia's and stayed. It was not a look of a master to a servant, nor a duke to an employee. It was a look that asked a question most men do not know how to form in words. "Are you lonely too?" "Yes," she said later that night to the glass and her own tired reflection. "But we are not foolish." The house did not care for their vows to be sensible. Houses like Altamira have appetites. They swallow and preserve, they test and tell. Morning altered nothing and changed everything. The house rose at dawn with its usual appetites: fires built, bread kneaded, horses led out to steam in the cold, but servants carried the night's words like errands. Before noon, even the stable cats knew the Duque had said love aloud. Dona Pilar cornered Lucia by the linen press, scandal and strategy wrestling beneath her severe widow's cap. "You will not walk alone," she hissed. "You will not enter a room without another woman present. The Marquez is not a man, he is a ledger wearing a face. He will not forgive this." "Forgive me?"
Lucia asked, astonished. "I am the one." "You are a woman," Dona Pilar said bluntly. "Men forgive nothing less easily than being told no with witnesses." The Duque sent for Lucia that afternoon to his library, the room that smelled of leather and long thought. He stood by the window again, the cane beside him like a friend allowed to speak only when spoken to. "I have sent Diego away," he said without preface. "But he is the Marquez's creature, not mine. He will return with teeth." Lucia meant to answer with dignity. What came out was neither dignified nor careful. "You spoke last night as if you believed I belonged to you," she said, blood hot in her face. "I do not." "No," he said.
"You belong only to God."
"And to yourself."
The simplicity unmanned her.
"Then why?"
"Because there are men who will hear you only if they are forced to hear me," he said. "And because I have become very tired of pretending to be dead." Silence, heavy as incense. He turned then fully, and despite herself Lucia took a half step back. Pain lived in one of his eyes like a tenant who had improved the house at the expense of its original design. The other eye was clear, present.
"Do you wish me to unsay it?" he asked. "Unsay love."
The thought felt like asking the sea to uncurl.
"No," she said.
He smiled and, as if the smile surprised him, laughed softly. "Then we must decide whether we are cowards." "We are not married," she said, too loud. "And you are a duke and I am only the woman who taught my niece to lift her voice without fear," he said. "The woman who walks this house with mercy that puts all my coats of arms to shame."
"You have a duty," she insisted.
"To what?" he asked, weary now. "To a title miserably maintained? To creditors who pretend concern? To a queen who has forgotten our names? I have duty to Ines, and to what is true." Lucia said nothing because the heart always knows its verdict before the brain drafts a speech. He took the cane then, more to occupy his hands than his weight. "I will send a letter to the Marquez," he said, as if planning a military maneuver he did not relish, informing him that our notes will be paid within the year.
"He will smile."
"He will not believe me. He will search for another lever. Men like him always have more than one."
"What can he use?" she asked. "You," he said gently. "And me."
Before dusk the lever arrived in a sealed carriage. The Marquez, his daughter draped in white fur, and a cleric Lucia did not know. They entered the great hall as if the stone belonged to them by merit of their arrogance.
"Altamira," Raimundo said with a flourish.
"We have come to discuss your future." "I was just writing to you about it," the Duque said.
"Fortunate."
The Marquez's eyes slid to Lucia where she stood with Ines at the far end of the room. He smiled that smile that always misread the world.
"Ah, the governess.
What a boon to find such talent in so humble a creature. But I'm afraid humility is not the virtue I came to seek." He gestured to the cleric. "Father Lope is willing to perform the announcement."
"The announcement?" Alejandro repeated.
"My daughter and you," Raimundo said.
"It is what is done, my friend."
"If one pillar leans, you prop it with another. Altamira and Avellaneda, how the names sing."
"They shriek," Alejandro said. "And you mistake me. The pillar does not lean.
It has chosen not to hold your roof." Raimundo's smile cracked, then reassembled with glue made of insult. "You speak bravely for a man whose debts could feed a province. Or perhaps you speak for the benefit of your—" He let his eyes rest on Lucia like a stain, "employees." Alejandro did not look away. I speak because I do not like being bought. You were not always so fastidious, the Marquez said, almost kindly. Do not pretend grief has made you pure. Ines, sensing the temperature change with the feral accuracy of children, gripped Lucia's hand. Lucia squeezed back. Raimundo sighed as if carrying a burden only saints could bear.
Very well.
We will do this the hard way.
Diego.
The footman slipped from a shadow, smirking. He had not gone far at all. He bowed extravagantly to Lucia, and she saw with a clarity that chilled her how men like him survive, by bending until you cannot tell whether their spines are supple or missing. I have a statement, he said, producing a paper with ink still damp. It recounts a certain scene in a certain corridor late last night. The governess invited me to.
Enough, Alejandro said, stepping forward. No, let him read, Raimundo purred.
Let us protect your innocence with truth.
Diego's mouth curved. She begged me.
Lucia did not let him finish. She lifted her voice, and all the practice of teaching a child scales at dawn turned her tongue into a bell.
You lie.
Raimundo's smile widened. We expected you to say so. Alejandro took another step and this time did not disguise that the cane was not a crutch but a weapon when needed. You will not put that name on that paper, he said.
Not in this house. Your house. Raimundo said.
This castle is an inn in which you rent the best room by the day. Spare me your grand gestures, Altamira. Sign the announcement or I sign this. The bishop will be pleased to hear of scandal, my lawyers will be more pleased. Lucia felt the ground shift under history. She turned to Ines and bent to whisper, Take my hand and do not fear. The child nodded, brave as only the grief-tempered are. Marquez, Alejandro said, the syllables dry as old bread, do what men like you always do.
Threaten.
But hear me, even if you turn the whole kingdom against me, I will not trade a woman's dignity for coin. Raimundo tilted his head. Then you choose ruin.
I choose truth, the Duque said.
They left in a rustle of fur and law. Diego lingered a heartbeat, letting his eyes slide once more over Lucia's throat as if memorizing it for a story he would tell badly later. Then he followed his master. After, the library felt smaller. You have made an enemy for life, Dona Pilar said, appearing like judgment. I have made one I already had visible, Alejandro answered. He looked at Lucia and his face softened. Forgive me. If I had been faster. You were precisely when you needed to be, she said. I will not live in a house where lies are currency.
Nor I, he said.
What will we do? He surprised her again by smiling like a boy.
We will fight. Against a Marquez?
Against the part of ourselves that wants to hide, he said. The Marquez is only a symptom. The disease is cowardice. That night, while the castle held council with its memories, Lucia crept to the small stone room off the chapel where the house kept its oldest books. She knew the Marquez. Men like him leave their fingerprints in ledgers the way thieves leave footprints in snow. Altamira did not sleep that week. Letters flew like startled birds, to Madrid, to the bishopric, to the men whose hands knew how to build barrels and bridges. Alejandro signed with a steadiness that surprised his steward. He took meetings at dawn with farmers who had only seen him at a distance. He listened to a mason describe the crack in the south tower with the care a father gives a child's fever. He moved as if pain were a negotiable tax. When it flared he halted and let it pass, and when it passed he went on. At night he and Lucia sat with the ledgers. He taught her how to read numbers the way some men read tracks, seeing not the footfall but the animal. She taught him how to ask questions that bit and held. Ines fell asleep on the rug with a book for a pillow and woke with ink on her cheek, proud as a soldier's first scar.
The house rallied.
The old majordomo Bartolome, who had served Alejandro's father and hated the modern world in equal measure, brought out keys to rooms no one had opened in years. If we must sell, he said gruffly, let us remember what we have before we let it go. There is a wine in the north cellars that could persuade saints to sin. The Marquez will not have it. The bishop came in person, a large man with kind fingers and a sharp gaze. He listened to Alejandro without interruption, then turned to Lucia and asked her to show him what she had found.
She did.
He grunted and said quietly, if this holds, Avellaneda will have to confess humility or fraud. He is not acquainted with the first. But he is with the second, Alejandro said dryly. The bishop looked levelly at him. You were never a pious man, Altamira. I like that. Piety as a costume stinks. But the truth? That has a scent clean enough even for a sinner's nose. Word ran ahead of justice, as it always does. In Villafranca men at the tavern said the Marquez had been caught shaving coins from the scales. In the women's market, they said his daughter ate oranges in winter, while children gnawed stale bread. The town made a decision that the city would later dignify with a judge's seal. It sided with the people it could look in the eye. It sided with the house that had hired them for 3 generations. It sided with the man it had seen bleed on his own road. Raimundo answered with the only tool he truly loved.
He sent papers. Accusations.
He wrote that Lucia had seduced the Duque and stolen ledgers, that the Duque, in a fit of madness driven by laudanum and grief, had imagined theft where there was only his own poor arithmetic. He had Diego swear to this with a signature that looked like a wound.
Let him write, Alejandro said, eyes bright.
Every word he spends now is a coin he cannot spend later. He began to walk without the cane inside the library. The first day he managed 3 steps before his leg howled.
The second, 5.
On the third day he crossed the room. He stood at the hearth and sweated like a sinner under summer glass.
He did not look broken.
He looked, at last, the way the house had always wanted him to look, responsible for it. Why hide so long? Lucia asked him that night when Inés slept and even the cat seemed tired. He did not pretend not to understand. He put his hands on the back of the chair as if it were a gate he might open if he found the courage. Because when the fall happened, I believed every word they said, he answered. That I was a decoration. That without the dance I was not a man. That my worth began in the quadrille and ended at the supper bell. I believed it until it made me cruel to myself and to anyone who loved me. Grief is a selfish country. I camped there and called it honor.
And now
a servant reached for the woman I love, he said simply. Sometimes God speaks softly. Sometimes he uses a man's arrogance as a trumpet. Lucia touched the chair 2 inches from his hand. Your leg
hurts, he said. It may always.
But pain is not the same as sentence. They stood like that, not touching, like 2 cliffs learning the shape of the sea between them. On the 7th day, Raimundo came not with letters but with men. They rode up the avenue with their hats at an angle that meant business and trouble. Diego rode behind, eager like a boy allowed to sit near the fire. The villagers watched from the walls and did not say good day.
Altamira, Raimundo called in the courtyard.
We will do this in view of heaven. Then leave your lies at the gate, Alejandro answered.
You wrong me, Raimundo said, laughing. I have brought a priest.
We will have a hearing and you will make amends to my honor. Your honor has never been in this courtyard, Alejandro said. He looked at the priest, young, nervous, eyes darting like swallows.
Father.
You should know we have already sent to the bishop. He will be here by noon.
Raimundo's eyes flashed.
Then we will wait with wine, he said, dismounting as if the stone had been trained to receive him.
Bring my men bread.
We will be courteous as we watch Altamira learn obedience.
They waited.
The sun climbed, gold and pitiless. The Marquez played at being host, admiring the towers as if they were a sculpture he meant to buy. He let his men wander where they pleased. He sent Diego to fetch water and then carelessly, to see that the governess is comfortable. Lucia, standing in the shadow of the east stair with Inés clutched to her, saw him coming and felt every muscle in her body decide. Señorita, Diego said with mock courtesy.
We meet again.
Have you considered my statement?
It can be altered. For a price.
My name is Miss Morales, she said. You will not address me.
Oh, forgive me, he cooed. Miss Morales.
Will you forgive me? If you will not, perhaps money will. Or perhaps.
Diego, a voice cut in.
Alejandro stood at the foot of the stair without the cane. He had Inés's small hand in his right and in his left the kind of control that makes other men remember their mothers. Diego's mouth curled. He reached again toward Lucia, not for her wrist this time but for her face, deliberately slow, as if to teach everyone watching what could be done to women who did not have titles. We were not finished, my lord, he said without looking away from her.
He touched air.
Alejandro moved not fast, he did not need fast, but with certainty. He caught Diego's reaching hand mid-air and bent it back with an efficiency of old training. Pain taught Diego courtesy where words had failed. Listen carefully, Alejandro said, low. Men have mistaken my silence for surrender.
That is my fault.
You will not mistake my love for weakness. That is yours.
He released him. Diego swore, color hot on his cheek.
Strike me and you strike Altamira, he spat.
I am Altamira, Alejandro said.
A murmur ran through the courtyard like a wind. At noon the bishop arrived with dust on his hem and a temper sharpened by righteous purpose. The hearing was held not in the chapel but in the yard so every ear could take its share. The Marquez presented his papers with a flourish that would have become a dancer if it had not been applied to slime. Lucia presented the ledgers. Alejandro spoke last, clearly, as if committing a confession he refused to make.